This session is being recorded just for the pictures, but we're not going to record the Q&A because that really should be private, so you can ask whatever questions you like. So Olivia is going to introduce herself and talk about what is social investment, so we get a high-level understanding of it.
Thanks, Esme, and lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for having me here today. As Esme said, I'm Olivia. I'm from Good Finance, and I'm going to do a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of what is social investment before we hear from some fantastic social investors on the call today. So bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay. Um, so essentially, let me just move to the next slide. I'm from an organization called Good Finance, and Good Finance is partly funded by Better Society Capital, part funded by Access, and we do not do any investment ourselves, unlike what our name might suggest. We are purely a source of information for charities and social enterprises navigating social investment. So essentially, we provide tools, resources, case studies, and learning to hopefully help you when you come to our website to make an informed decision when you're exploring social investment. So we have everything from an investor directory where you can search and find from different social investors based across the UK, case studies showing how organizations, social purpose organizations have used social investment. And we try and be really transparent with the amount of social investment taken, cost of capital, and all the key information that you need to know, as well as tools like the Is It Right for Us tool, the outcomes matrix to help you in kind of navigating some of those questions and some of those areas that you might be wondering about social investment. So I'll pop a link to our website in the chat and please do check it out and please do reach out to me after the call if you do have any questions around what we do or if we can help you further. It's worth saying all the information, all the stuff on our website is all free to use. We're not trying to push people towards social investment, but we really believe that you should be able to make an informed decision when you're exploring finance options. So, what is social investment? Social investment is the use of repayable finance to help an organization achieve its social purpose. So, we talk about social investment as being just one tool in your financial toolkit. We often see organizations using it alongside grants, trading income, and other forms of income. And it can be used for a really wide range of purposes. So, organizations might use it if they want to buy an asset, perhaps to run their activities from. It might be that they want to cash flow and maintain cash flow. So, for example, you might have a contract coming through. You might need some help with your cash flow in the interim period. It might be that you want to grow and innovate. Perhaps you're operating within a certain area and you want to expand your business, or you want to start a new stream of work. Maybe you're looking to kickstart a new stream of work and supporting more people. Social investment can help you to do all of those things. It's not a short-term solution, but it is one that hopefully can help your organization become more resilient and more sustainable and deliver even more impact in the longer term. Because this is a very short introduction, I'm going to play a quick video, which hopefully explains social investment in just a couple of minutes, better than what I can do. And then we'll pass over to the social investors. But as I said, if you do have any questions, or if it's helpful to learn more about good finance, please do reach out to me.
Across the UK, charities and social enterprises like yours are tackling some of society's biggest problems. Maybe you've set up a coffee business to give people the skills to get back into work, or are running a nursery and using the profits to support local parents. Whatever your mission, you'll need money to help with cash flow, to grow your organisation, or to buy an asset like a new building. You might even need finance to kick-start your new venture, and that money could come from traditional grants or donations, or as a loan from your local bank. One option is to get that money from a social investor. That social investor could be an organisation or an individual, and you can borrow their money or offer them shares in your organisation. But what makes a social investor different? Well, they don't just want to see a return on their investment. They want to see their money being used for good, helping you to keep delivering your social mission. Sound good? To see if it's right for you, check out goodfinance.org.uk.
Okay, so that is my whistle-stop tour of social investment, and I will pass back to Esme. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. It was a very informative video. So I hope you can see from the wonderful introduction by Good Finance, the goal really here is for you to understand this type of funding as part of potentially a wider sort of round of different ways you might bring in money. That's really our goal here. And we've got three wonderful individuals who are going to pitch to you. So, for most of us, we are used to unending pitches to different funders, but we want to sort of reverse that power dynamic today. And instead of asking our funders a bunch of different questions, we're going to put them in the spotlight so they can talk about who they are, a little bit about their background, what brought them to their particular role, because there are humans behind every single fund. We're not at a place where AI is running funds. Um, and talk about what the fund is, how it works, where that money comes from, which has a big impact in terms of how they can use that money, what types of businesses and organizations and charities and social enterprises they fund, what kind of legal structures they're able to fund, which is an important one to consider, and what you can spend that money on. Things to also think about and reflect on as they share. It's not just the money, but potentially what else they can provide. So most funders will provide something else, technical support, access, networks. It's also how they support you as you go through an application, what support they might have. Because for most of us, we're not used to such intense due diligence sometimes, and we need a bit of support in being able to do a financial forecast, to be able to get a business plan together, and also how a funder might react and treat you if there are problems in being able to repay that money. And social investors are different to just a normal commercial bank. So they're going to have about 5 minutes each, 5 to 7 minutes each. They've all got decks, just like you would if you were pitching. And they're going to run through these points. We're going to take questions at the end of all of the pitches. But if you are like me and you have, unending amounts of questions, put them in the chat so we don't forget them. And wonderful Abby over here, who will wave, is monitoring Zoom and monitoring the chat. So we will try and make sure that we have time for your questions. We can't answer questions specifically about if a funder can fund you. That is only really, sort of a funder can only really help you do that once you put an application in, but we can take more broader questions. Okay, so we're going to start with Whitney, then we'll go to Meena, and then we'll go to John. So over to you, Whitney.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction, particularly the video. I found that really, really helpful. So can Esme just give me a thumbs up if my screen is sharing? Yeah, great. Thank you for that. So just a little bit about me and Triodos Bank. We were set up solely for the purpose of using money for positive social and environmental impact. So it's very much in our DNA. It's absolutely all that we do. We're a European bank. We were founded in the Netherlands, but we've been operating here in the UK for over 25 years now. And what we do is quite straightforward. People open bank accounts with us, might be a cash ISA or just a personal current account. And then we use those funds and lend them out to organizations that are working across a variety of sectors where we know that they are creating positive impact. And so we have a team, they're called relationship managers, and their job is really to be expert in different sectors, and they're organized along sector teams. So just to give you some examples of things that we lend to, it really spans the range from, lending to an arts and culture charity, to lending to organic farmers, to helping build and finance onshore wind. So really quite a broad spectrum there. Now, my role at the bank, I'm actually not on the lending side. Um, I head up a team that's an advisory team, and we help social enterprises and charities that are mission driven, that need access to capital, where a loan from the bank might not be the right fit. And so, as you can see on this slide, we have a crowdfunding platform, and where we think it's a good fit, we can help organizations raise investment capital. This isn't gift crowdfunding or reward-based crowdfunding. This is still investment, but you can raise that directly from investors. Um, so that is what my team focuses on. Um, and as for myself, just to tell you a little bit about me, I've been in the social investment sector for over 20 years now. I've been at Triodos Bank for quite a long time. So I've really kind of seen the evolution of the ecosystem and the role that organizations like Good Finance in particular, is really fantastic in order to just really helping to demystify what this is all about. So I'm just going to spend a few short minutes just really hopefully helping you think through, when you need investment, the first place to start is just to really think about, what is it that you're trying to do? Why do organizations borrow money? And organizations borrow money for a whole host of reasons. But who you go to for that investment is very much driven by what you need the money for. Because of course, debt isn't substitute for revenue funding. It doesn't replace your revenue-based grants. It's not going to replace income, but it can help you buy an asset, for example. It can help provide you with working capital to kind of bridge the gap and until for example, a building that you might purchase might need refurbishing, and then you'll be able to deliver services from that. So there's different roles that it can play. But really, it's just being clear on that distinction between borrowing money that is for investment and not viewing this as any kind of plug for revenue funding. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it's really just to help you think about that, that there are different kinds of investment and funding that are suitable for different kinds of risk. And so I think, you as an investor, you as an organization looking to borrow money, I think it's sometimes quite helpful for you to understand how we look at the world, because then that can just help you really pitch your ask, in the right way. So being really clear on, what it is that you're, asking an investor to invest in. What is the risk that you think they're going to be taking in terms of, do you have track record of revenue generation? How many years of that? For example, if you're purchasing an asset, is that something that you've done before? Is this new to you? Do you have other sources of funding, such as capital grants, that are going to complement the loan? These are all the different kinds of things that you need to think about. It's also really important for you to think about what you want out of this, because I know sometimes the balance of power can feel quite the wrong way, as if, the people who have the money kind of are in the position to make the decision. But you, as the entrepreneur or the person leading your organization, you really need to think, is this the right kind of finance for me and my organization? Is it going to work for me? What happens when things go wrong? Is this the kind of investor that's going to sit down with me and really work things through? Are the terms flexible, or are they really rigid in terms of when you need to be repaid? And you also, in addition to just being able to articulate a plan of what it is that you want to do, you want to be able to demonstrate that you've thought about different scenarios. What happens if things take longer than you anticipate? And those are the kinds of things that investors want to see. They don't want you to come to them saying everything's rosy. There's no risk in this. Actually, if you come to us and say, these are the risks that my business face or my organization faces, this is how we anticipate and mitigate against them, and these are our plans when things go wrong, that actually makes your application, I think, just that much stronger. There's loads to talk about. I'm not going to be able to cover it all. But one of the things that Esme specifically asked me to comment on was Why do organizations who apply either for a loan with Triodos Bank or come to us in my team to work for funding, what's the most common reason why they don't proceed? The number one reason for us is mission fit. So even though we make it very clear what we're about in terms of being, impact driven, we still get, unfortunately, a lot of applications from organizations that aren't impact first. So that's the first one. And then the second one is really about just life stage. So being very early stage organizations, as a bank, and even on the crowdfunding side, we are not best position to support organizations with an unproven business model. And that's because we're lending depositors' funds. So unfortunately, our risk appetite, if you're trying to think, where we sit within the social investment ecosystem, I would say we sit at this, the more conservative end, therefore backing more mature charities and social enterprises. That being said, my team, because we're raising capital directly from investors and not lending the bank's money, we are a little bit more flexible and we are often able to work with organizations at an earlier stage. So I'll stop there because I know that there's quite a lot to get through. I do have some links, and I can share these. Slides. I don't know if there's the ability. Oh, right. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. There are some really nice case studies in here, in terms of organizations that that we've worked with, whether that be the London Early Years Foundation. So this speaks very much to the example in Olivia's clip around a childcare provider. Using the funding that they can get from operating in more affluent areas to provide places for children in more deprived areas. That's very much Leaf's model. And there's a few other case studies on here, and then there are some links at the end to our application portal and my contact details if you'd like to get in touch. So I'll hand back to Esme. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney, for that brilliant breakdown of how Triodos might work. I'm sure that probably quite a lot of you have heard of Triodos, seen them around, and they have been going for quite some time and doing some brilliant work, but perhaps you haven't had the time or the opportunity to really think about where they sit in the social investment ecosystem and who they fund. And it might be that, they on the lending side, they support social enterprises that are slightly later on, and it's thinking about, well, how would I get to that point where that might be applicable for me, and would I, right? Do I need to be planning to buy an asset, for example, in 3 to 4 years, and could I really get myself in a good position to be able to do that now? There's questions like that. So yeah, keep your questions coming, sort of questions like, well, what exactly does Triodos define as a truly impactful social enterprise? Like you sort of like, and that is also a big thing to think about because the word impact gets used a lot and people define it in different ways. And to think about any other questions that you have for Whitney about how Triodos works, either on the lending side or the crowdfunding side as well. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Meena now.
Thank you all, and great to hear from Olivia and Whitney as well. So I'll try not to spend time going over the same points. I have some slides as well, and talk about maybe where some of the differences are. So I'm representing here Charities Aid Foundation. Sorry, overexcited with the clicking of the mouse there. So who am I? I'm Meena Manian. I lead the social investment team here at Charities Aid Foundation. Currently, we've got over 70 social enterprise and charity borrowers. We've got over £7 million of loans out at the moment. We've been established over 20 years ago. And I guess what's my background? Why am I here? I've spent, sort of over 10 years in leverage finance, sort of in more commercial banking, but really all around unsecured cash flow lending. So all about, how can we lend today against future borrowings, and really taking that learning into my work currently. I've spent about 6 or 7 years as a social enterprise consultant. So I think I put in my blurb, will very much have spent my time walking around with post-it notes and Sharpies, thinking about everything and working with organizations like yourselves around theory of change, strategy documents, preparing management accounts, and how do you operationalize things. And for the last 2 years, I've been here at CAF, bringing those two aspects, I guess, from finance and the theory to bear. And really, why do I do this work? Why do I feel so passionate about it? I really am passionate about using kind of the responsible use of debt, and how that can be a really useful tool in driving growth and sustainability and impact. And really, that's how we use it and how we see it at CAF in our social investment team. So who are Charities Aid Foundation? Possibly the world's best kept secret. We've been around for the best part of 100 years. So my journey with CAF is quite small, but really we are a charity ourselves, and really we exist to accelerate, the progress in society towards a fair and sustainable future for all. And really, as a charity working for charities and social purpose organisations, we want to collaborate with you, and we want to provide the products that move money from philanthropic channels, which we work with, to into organisations like yourself. So just a little bit of what we've been doing with our time over the last 100 years or so. Obviously, the slides will be shared. This is just some of the kind of wider products that CAF has. I won't spend an awful lot of time here, but there are wider things that we do. I'll just focus on social investment today. So we've talked about what social investment is. We've heard from Good Finance. We've heard from Whitni as well, Triodos. It's a loan, as long as in terms of how CAF think about it, and it's repayable finance. We do want it back. But what do we think it can do for you? Really, it's there to build your resilience. It's catalytic in terms of it can help you grow, and security in terms of giving you that time and space to plan for the longer term. In terms of the social investment fund, which we run, as I said, that's, we've been sort of a pioneer in this space. We've been around for the best part of 20 years, probably for as long as social investment has been around in the UK. We've seen a fair bit, and we've worked with quite a lot of organisations. So over that 20 years, over 700 organisations, over 65 million out the door. And we use, our money comes from CAF's philanthropic donors, can be both private individuals, can also be corporates. And they can choose to elect to put their funds, their monies, their philanthropic monies into our fund, and we look to lend that on and recycle those monies. So as Whitney's already talked about, and as Olivia's talked about, there are a number of uses. We don't really have a lot of restrictions around how social investment can be used. But really, we're looking at how will it generate sort of additional income, and how will the ultimate users, your customers, your beneficiaries, the people that you work with, will benefit from that. So there's a multitude of options as your organisation might spend it. And Whitni talked about, being really clear about the purpose is really, really important. So as I said, we get our money from sort of philanthropic channels, from our donors, and part of the impact that we're also trying to create is from the donor side to show that they can recycle their monies. So that repayable element is really important. And actually, every time an organisation makes their repayment, that's another bit of impact that's created, and that's another bit of money that we can then get back out of the door. And we see that as a really important cycle. So in terms of sort of the current lending product, I guess that we have from CAF in terms of social investment, that comes from our Venturesome Impact Fund. And really, we see this fund as sort of complementary to everything else that's in the market. So both kind of, my peers that are on this call today, and the that will be represented on considered capital and good finances directories. Really for us at CAF, it's about driving greater social impact. It's about building organisation resilience and really about building investment in trading income. That's really the key. That's what we're looking for. And it's about recycling that philanthropic capital. So some of the key components were evergreen, open all year round, cause universal. Don't need to tie yourself up into knots into a particular sector, but we do look for impact. That is critical. We're UK wide. We'd like to think we're affordable, so we're at 5.5% fixed at the moment. We can lend anywhere between £50,000 to £1 million, typically unsecured. So really thinking about that future cash flow that you're going to bring in, and that's what we'd be looking for the repayments to come from. And typically it's 3 to 5 year money. We can go a bit longer in certain instances. So flexibility. I'll just probably pop all of these up. Because we're open all year round, we can certainly be patient around, there's no specific application period. And if we do need to extend the loan, we absolutely can do. That's not a problem. As I said, we're cause universal, and we're keen that organisations articulate their impact and their measures in the way that makes sense to them. We won't impose anything on you. And sometimes, and almost always, I've never seen a plan that goes to plan. It'll overshoot, it'll undershoot. Everyone on this call will be there. And we understand that. And, Whitni and John will also understand that. And really, it's really just about being there. And we can vary it if there's a reason and the rationale is clear. And I think it's really clear. And I would say that's for all of us, is just once you've entered into the relationship, just keep those lines of communication open. It's just so important and will really help for us to make sure whoever you're lending from will help to make sure that those loans are working for you. And let me pop all this up in one go. Oh, sorry, so excited. In terms of structure, as I said, it's typically 3 to 5 year money. It typically repays on a monthly basis, but we can be a bit more bespoke depending on what your actual cash flow needs. If you've got some seasonality, if you need a little bit of breathing space at the beginning, we can look at sort of maybe an interest-only period. We do have other types of facilities like standby facilities, or we can invest in bonds. I've talked about the fact that it's cash flow lending or it's unsecured, and really what I mean by that is that we don't necessarily need an asset that we need to attach the monies to. That obviously just is slightly risk dependent, but most of our monies is unsecured. And then there's the wider CAF family and other things that we can offer or certainly signpost you to. We have an advisory arm, we have CAF Bank, we have CAF Donate. There are a number of other opportunities where we can highlight your organization. You can come and speak to us. We can provide templates for cash flow forecasts, for business plans if you don't have those to plan. And the way we hope that our application process is set up and the things that we ask really shouldn't be anything that you aren't thinking about yourself, but also just we hope it helps you think about, okay, well, these are the things that we are thinking about as a lender. So you also, as the management team or as a board, will also be thinking about. And again, Whitni talked about, why things may not progress, and Esme asked us to have a look. So I guess from our perspective, again, sort of leading with impact, if it's not central to your model, that's the sort of first check and the first no if that doesn't fit for us. Purpose, it's really important for CAF and the Venture Impact Fund that it's really about growing trading income. So a bridge to a grant, for example, wouldn't be something that we would be looking at. We're really looking at how can this money help build additional income for you and leave your organisation in a stronger and more sustainable place going forward. Lack of detail might be another reason, not of analysis, not a full understanding of really the market, the operations, your forecasts, not recognizing your risks, so that lack of detail. So sort of having a great idea is great, but we really want to see underneath that, what's the thinking underneath all of that. Viability, sometimes the idea is great, but actually it just, in 3 to 5 year money, 3 to 5 years, if you're borrowing, as an example, £100,000 at our rate, you need just under £2,000 in free cash flow unrestricted cash flow to repay us. We can extend that, we can look at different things, but I think just understanding, okay, is there enough being generated here? Sometimes it might be to do with team or governance, that we don't feel there's quite enough sort of oversight or capacity, or it might be around reporting, that actually that there's sort of not enough in terms of policies or financial documentation. But hopefully we can raise that with you sooner rather than later, and there are things that you may choose to put in place going forward. So our process is probably 8 to 12 weeks. I won't go through all of that, but we sort of try to take it through a fairly linear process. But, lots of conversation. It's definitely not computer says no. We are real people that will do things at the end, and we'll look at things and we'll speak to you. It's very important that we come and see you where you are and meet your team. Just a couple of case studies that I've got as well that I've just shared. I've just put one on the slide deck here, and there's a bit more when we send the decks out. But this is an organisation we just lent to recently, and really the loan was all about supporting working capital so they can really crystallise their next stage of growth, and part of the monies will be used to build the team and part to sort of expand marketing activities. There's one more. I won't go through all this detail, but a couple of other slides. Esme, I will hand back to you.
Thank you. That slide is a lot of information. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for so much detail, which is why I think these sessions are so useful, because so much of this information can feel hidden or not obvious when you look on websites, things to be thinking about and things to consider before you waste your time on a application. As you can see, there's big differences between even Triodos and CAF here in terms of where is the money coming from, philanthropic money versus a bank. What does that mean for who they can invest in, at what stage, and for what reasons? And we're going to sort of dig into that a bit more when we've got the Q&A. So start thinking about what your questions are. Sort of our final speaker is John. I'll hand over to you. Last but not least.
Hi, thanks very much. Always difficult in coming to the last slot, and I'm afraid what I'll say is probably going to be repeating what my colleagues have done, and the quality of the slides is also somewhat lacking compared to theirs, but there we go. I will try and share this. He says. Okay. Is that everyone see that okay? Good. Okay. Right. So, well, very quick outline of what I'm going to tell you, a bit of background about social investment business, or SIB for short, my role, what we currently offer, the process and support we offer, and again, overlapping with what colleagues have said, what we kind of look for in terms of successful application, and a couple of case studies. So SIB's been around, excuse me, for over 20 years, providing finance and other support to charities and social enterprises. And the idea is to sort of basically help them do what they do best. They're organizations out there actually serving the communities that they operate within. And so we're sort of there to support them with the ultimate goal of building a stronger and fairer community. And our website has undergone a great deal of development in the last sort of couple of years. They're really a great guy on that. So I'd very much encourage you to have a look at that. To have a look at the website. It contains everything I'm going to tell you and more. And the key thing really, and this is something that has been pointed out, is we have 5 core values that we kind of, I know every organization has. I used to work in commercial banking. We had sort of values and mission statements, which were a bit of a, people talked about but never actually really lived. But these 5, putting people first, being curious, bold, collaborative, accountable, really does inform everything we try and do. Whoops, go back. I'm long title, Head of Credit Risk and Portfolio Management. So broadly speaking, I look after the team of relationship managers who you would interact with should you sort of come to us for funding. So there are two broad elements to that. It's looking at new applications for funding, and then sort of recommending those to the investment committee if we do sort of consider that supportable. But obviously, as repayable finance loans, they're not grants. They do sit around for, sort of number of years. So really only sort of, we have a portfolio of loans, and my relationship managers, as well as assessing new ones, they will actually manage a portfolio of customers as well. Personally, I've been with SIB just under 5 years, and my first foray into the social arena has spent the previous 30 years in various sort of credit roles in commercial investment banking, mainly in London, and a few years in New York. So what does SIV have to offer at the moment? As we operate through a fund structure, so we raise money for particular funds. Some of it comes, a small amount comes internally. We are our sort of parent organisation, the foundation, has some capital which they will sort of you provide to us. But quite often we work. You've heard them mention previous Better Society Capital. Are a great partner for us in terms of raising debt finance. Access Foundation, a great partner for providing sort of grant monies, particularly out of you might have seen in the press recently, the dormant asset program that they tend to manage on behalf of the government. So the ones we won't have at the moment, Community Builders Fund. It was recently renamed, used to be called Recovery Loan Fund. Provides loans of between 100,000 up to 1.5 million to charities and social enterprises in England, Wales, and Scotland. It's the purpose is very. There are no restrictions. It can include even refinancing, all that sort of thing. You can see a few of the key terms there. We try and be sort of flexible. There's initial capital repayment holidays. There's no early prepayment fees, and as I'll mention later, we are, as others have mentioned, we're a patient lender. So we don't expect everything to go perfectly throughout the life of the loan, and so we're always on hand to help out, which I'll touch upon a little bit later. So that's purely a loan fund. Flexible finance, which is funded by Access Foundation, that's actually a grant fund, but it's a bolt-on to Community Builders Fund. You can't have one without the other. So if you want a flexible finance loan, and it is very much focused on Black and racially minoritized-led organisations in England, that has to come alongside repayable finance from Community Builders Fund. As the second bullet says there, the grant can be anywhere between 50% and 100% of the loan value, but it is capped. It's a much smaller pot, so it is capped at 200,000 per application, whereas the loan, as I said above, could go as high as 1.5 million. And finally, the Energy Resilience Fund, as the name might suggest, it's a blended product, 60% loan, 40% grant, to basically improve energy resilience. Now, here, the particular, in terms of purpose, obviously it is intended for energy resilience measures, but obviously the charities, social enterprises applying can again come from any sort of. It's not focused on any particular sector. It's just that they need, in some ways, here they might want to reduce their carbon emissions, energy costs. They might need to upgrade energy efficiency ratings, particularly, for example, organisations who rent out property, particularly sort of supporting sort of refugees and people fleeing domestic violence, where if the government regulations come into force, they will have to be certain energy performance ratings to be achieved before you can actually do that. So there's certain things coming down the track. It might be that the certain parts of buildings just aren't really usable or comfortable to use in their current setup. So putting some kind of insulation, some new windows or whatever can be beneficial. Replacing older vehicles or equipment, maybe with any energy efficient vehicles, electric vehicles, things like that. But that's the energy piece, and that is what the fund is about. Can be anywhere from 25k to 250k, the total package, including the grant. And the purpose does have to be focused on the installation of those energy measures or purchase of any energy efficient equipment. But again, the actual underlying organization, there is no sort of set organization or sector that we look at, although they do need to be based in England. In terms of process, again, apologies, my colleagues have much nicer, flow diagrams and things, but here you go. The best place to start is our website. As I mentioned before, it provides all manner of links, guidance, FAQs, and it does provide detail on products I've mentioned, but also goes into eligibility criteria, which obviously is a key thing. I know I've seen a few questions in the chat about sort of would I be eligible, would I not, and it goes through that in quite some detail and provides application forms. We work generally with these funds a number of sector partners. And you can actually choose with who you want to work with. If you don't, it might be that you have worked with a particular social partners before, or you just feel when you look at them that their focus perhaps a better fit for what you actually do. On the Flexible Finance Program, we specifically work with two organisations, UBLA and UBLA Initiative and Create Equity. They don't actually do the assessments; it is done with SIB. But they very much specialize in supporting eligible organizations through the application process, helping with all the application through cash flows, business plans, all sorts of things. But although they specialize in that for that particular program, if you're applying for something else, the community builders or energy, and you have any issues or questions about the application or process, whether you're working with us directly or one of our partners, delivery partners, you do reach out and you can discuss any sort of aspect of that. If the application is eligible and comes through, then the SIB or whoever you're working with via a relationship manager be fully engaged with you throughout the process. So it'll stem from sort of talking about your specific needs, why you want the money. Ask relevant questions to help them understand what you do, but also there, for you to understand and ask questions about whatever concerns might be about the process, etc. And finally, quickly on, my team are called relationship managers for a reason. It's the application, a successful application is just the start of the journey. It's a loan, so you'll be there for, anywhere from 1 to 10 years or more. And the relationship manager will remain closely involved with you throughout the life of the loan. To reiterate something, so we're not a high street bank, and problems do occur. We're here to help. Our mission is to help you succeed. So that's very much the different. The idea of a social lender and patient lending is just that. Yes, it's a loan, interest, etc. But hopefully we can be a lot more sort of flexible and accommodating if issues do arise. So in terms of what we look for, or turning it around to sort of overlap with what my colleagues sort of mentioned earlier, is there's a lot of overlap because it is we do hope to get the money back. So we do the various aspects that we do look at. Is the proposal realistic? We've had recently where people have had maybe an annual income of £200,000 and they've asked for a loan of £500,000. You think, well, that's not really realistic. So it's just sort of that sort of thing. Make that sort of thing. Impact, we talked about a lot. What do you do? Why do you do it? Where do you do it? Who do you support? Do you do it well? Things like that. Impact is we take that very seriously, as the colleagues also mentioned. We actually have various metrics and issues and things that we sort of look at to assess impact. It's a very broad term, but it's something that certainly is. During the sort of application assessment process, if there's any issues around you're not sure about it, that's certainly something that can be discussed. What else? When we're looking at the people, we're looking at governance, the leadership, the financial management. What's the market like? What's the business model? Are you this is mentioned by my colleague earlier, are you clear on what you're trying to achieve? What's your experience and historic resilience? Is there demand for what you're doing? Who are competitors and what makes you different and better? So who buys your services? Quite often, for example, an example there would be we have quite a few leisure centres, maybe been spun out of or councils, and what we support them. But where we would look at is, well, what does it makes someone come to your leisure centre rather than to Virgin or one of the other ones, commercial ones around, and there, and particularly then that ties back in with the impact is, are they providing services for disadvantaged groups? Do they offer sliding scales of membership fees to allow for different things? So it's just how they differentiate themselves from the general market. In financial, what we're looking at, it's revenue streams, diversity, security, how subject to change are they? So that's where if someone's heavily dependent on donations and grants, that can be fine, but clearly that's a bit more of a potentially lumpy and not quite so predictable source of income to say ongoing trading. But again, it can differ. And that's where, with historic, we look at track record, trends, the ability to generate surpluses, resilience of the balance sheet. When things don't go as planned, what kind of reserve levels do you have? How good are you at managing costs? Things like that. Existing debt, do you have any? Quite often there aren't, but if you do, how have you managed? Can you afford to take on new debt? And then debt capacity, can you afford to repay the loan? The source of repayment. Again, my colleagues mentioned that in the other presentations. We tend to see, in terms of eligibility, so it's quite often that we typically look at organisations who've been in operation for 2 years or more, because we tend to find that the earlier stage ones, repairable finance isn't always the best option. So it's things like that in terms of assessing what the need is and how the ability to repay it. And that then ties in with one of the things we do ask for is like a cash flow forecast, and we can help with some organisations are far more experienced at doing that than others. We've got templates, we can help with stuff like that. The final bullet there, plenty of templates and advice online. It's worth taking time over, because that's where it's a loan, so we're looking to the future. And then any forecast it is what it is. It's as good as the assumptions made on it. So we have to be very clear on what those assumptions are and are they realistic? Does it tally with historic performance? And does it show the need that you're asking for, particularly if it's the cash flow shortfall? If that's not evident and that's what you're asking for, so well, what's it? Just everything needs to tie in with that. Just a few case studies. So I haven't actually got the names up. This was taken from another thing where we had to be a little more sort of compliance savvy. So we haven't actually got the name, but this is an example. Was a youth organisation based in North London delivering youth work, supporting youth sector in access and education, training, and employment. So that was one. It was a flexible finance one. So they had a 50,000 loan from Community Builders Fund, an unrestricted grant of 50,000, and flexible finance also offers a smaller pot of money where we can offer small restricted grants. So in this case, 2,500, and that will be specifically for something like we feel that they need to employ a consultant to work on their impact report, or maybe on their business plan, or some additional help with forecasting. So we can actually, as well as providing, in that case, they had 100,000 in total of loan and grant, which is unrestricted, and was relatively free to use. The 2,500 was restricted and will be very much sort of focused on what they, what that there's a specific purpose for that particular piece. And in this case, the unrestricted money was used to, with funding some staff roles to free up the capacity. It was a little bit of a one-man band. So the CEO was doing an awful lot of stuff. So they brought in a couple of additional staff roles to help with that and free his capacity up so he could kind of step back and be a bit more strategic.
Hey John, hi. I think
Sorry.
I want to make sure that we've got a little bit of time
Of
for.
course, yeah. No, let me start. It was only case studies and couldn't
No,
say,
the case study is really, really helpful to give people a sense of what these organizations look like. But I do want to make sure that we at least have a little bit of time
cool.
for.
Yep. No, I will stop right there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for these sort of detailed pitches, to get a real sense of like what is it you need to think about here? Is repayable financing something that's useful for you now, or for a lot of you in the future? And many people are very fearful of debt, um, particularly female founders, we're particularly fearful of debt, but debt can be happy, act as a very helpful tool, for some organizations and social enterprises and businesses that need it at a particular stage for a particular reason. And it's not personal debt. No one's asking to put your mortgage up as collateral. And sometimes these are, as Meena said, unsecured loans. So I know I think one of the biggest sort of areas of frustration and also confusion is what type of legal structures can different organizations fund? Um, and I know it can feel really frustrating if you are not quite the right structure for a particular fund. And sometimes it does mean that actually you might be, for various different reasons, in the wrong structure. And sometimes it's just not quite a good fit. Because in this case, if you're impact driven, you could be a charity, you could be a community benefit organization, you could be a CAC, you could be a for-profit business. You can be a for-profit business with a mission lock, potentially with cap returns. You could have something around your articles of association, could be B Corp. There's lots of options, and I know that Olivia put a really fantastic example, not example, resource in the chat as well around where you could look for more information generally about what types of legal structures are applicable for what different things. But all the funders here today have different types of organizations that they can fund, and you really need to be having a look at that eligibility, and potentially speaking to lawyers around making sure that your structure is right for the organization that you are building. I also think there was a question about what exactly is a social enterprise. I think maybe that's a useful one. I don't know, Olivia, do you? I'm gonna put you on the spot here if you want to provide a bit of definition, because it's often one of those words that are very misunderstood.
Yeah, and sorry, my throat's gone a bit croaky. Social enterprise essentially is an organization that is impact driven, but I think what is really important to recognize is it's not just impact, it's also looking at how it can generate revenue as well. So an organization that really puts kind of people first, but really understanding how it can generate kind of a business around that. So kind of, I suppose, one of the I guess examples I've heard is kind of like think impact, but think like a business. So really kind of those two strands of both impact and financial return. But social enterprises, there are a whole myriad of legal structures that come under that bubble of legal structure or social enterprise. There's not one size that fits all. I had a quick look and we did have a blog that kind of covers some of this, which I will share in the chat. But essentially, I think one of the things that really defines a social enterprise is just having that mission lock and that asset lock in your articles of association. So that means that if your business fails, that the social mission continues, that any assets will be transferred to another organization that can continue that social mission.
Yes. We maybe have one minute for a question. If someone wants to sort of share a question out loud, if there's something somebody wants to ask directly to our funders today.
I mean, maybe while somebody's thinking about that, Esme, I was just going to add on to what you and Olivia were saying. I think it's just really important when entrepreneurs are thinking about legal structures to not like it's a really big decision. And so they just need to think about the longevity of the organization and not do something to satisfy a particular funder. So that would just be the main thing I think for people to take away is it's just, this is a decision that you're making for your organization, your enterprise for many, many years. And so to not go down the road of going, oh, it must be a kick because this particular funder wants the asset lock, because once you've done that, you can't rewind that, particularly once you asset lock your business.
Yes, exactly. It's a really, really big decision that I see a lot of organizations making quite quick, fire rapid choices. And I think it's also thinking about what kind of money you might need in the future to make sure that you're in the best structure to be able to get it. Um, so I think we'll wrap that up for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and digging into this really important topic around social investment, who it's for, who's applicable to. I know there are some people that are international here today, but I hope you still learned something around social investment is a global concept, not a UK specific concept. And thank you for all our wonderful funders who came along. We'll be sharing their resources afterwards in an email. And thank you for Good Finance for helping us put on this event today.